shattered limbo. So it begins. I remember thinking my cappuccino was getting colder. I already used the 3 sugar packets. I probably should use the spoon to mix it. But then again, it'll ruin the beauty of the layers. A layer of 30 milliliters espresso coffee, 90 milliliters fresh milk and 20 milliliters layer of foam. I chose the table at the very back near the green wall. There were only 6 tables and they were running parallel to the wall one after the other. A ceiling fan's shadows were dancing around the dimly lit room. Barista was aimlessly gazing at the road through the glass door. 14.93 mgs of caffeine. It's enough to stimulate my central nervous system. It makes me feel awake, less drowsy. The door opened, father, mother and a 14-year-old daughter entered. Daughter had a Barbie doll. She bought 3 cheesecakes. She ate the first one. Halfway through the second one, she looked at the barista and said, how can it be cheesecake? There's no cheese in it. She laughed out loud. I took a sip from my cappuccino. I heard a suppressed giggle of a female. There she was. Long blonde hair, red lips, blue eyes, and the blood-red gown. She was in her late 20s. She was wearing a white aryllia flower in her hair. She just stood there with a smile on her red lips. I could see the dark circles under her eyes. She started walking towards the exit. I got up to my feet and followed her. She closed the door and stared at me through the glass door. Her smile has disappeared, it was replaced with the saddest face I've ever seen. She turned around and slowly walked towards the river. I opened the door and stepped into the moonlit night. She sat by the riverbank. A black candle, a white candle and a candle made out of a seashell was by her side. I sat next to her. We looked at the river in silence. What's your name? We both asked at the same time. We both smiled. My name is Lumi, she said. Like the snow? I asked her. No, it means light of life, she said. They call me Limbo, I told her. It means void, yes. She asked me. No, it means neither heaven nor hell. Lumi lit the candles quietly. She picked up the seashell candle and set her red gown on fire. I watched as she burned until only ashes remain. Wind carried the ashes to the river. It caused ripples. After a while the water returned to the previous state. Everything was calm and quiet. I remember thinking my cappuccino was getting colder. I already used the 2 sugar packets. It begins again. 14.93 mgs of caffeine is more than enough to stimulate my central nervous system. It makes me feel awake. How can it be cheesecake? There's no cheese in it. There she was. Long blonde hair, red lips, blue eyes, and the blood-red gown. She just stood there with a smile on her red lips. She turned around and slowly walked towards the river. I opened the door and stepped into the night. I looked up at the sky. Not a single star in sight. Only black clouds. She threw a rock into the river. It bounced on the surface of water and then sank to the bottom of the river. The ripples crashed onto one another. Just when the water settled down, a rain started. She put her hands on my shoulders. I held my hands against the sides of her waist. We slow danced in the rain. We sat by the river bank. I still had the paper serviette that came with the cappuccino in my pocket. Lumi, her name is Lumi. I wrote in the paper serviette. Limbo, it's time. Her eyes were overflowing with tears. I nodded as if to say okay. She slowly walked into the river. I watched as she disappeared under the river. I remember thinking my cappuccino was getting colder. I already used the last sugar packet. It begins once more. 14.93 mgs of caffeine is more than enough to stimulate my central nervous system. It makes me feel awake. I took a sip. And another one. Until my cup was empty. I put my hand in my pocket by coincidence. To my surprise, I found a dozen or so paper serviettes. Lumi, her name is Lumi. These letters were written on the topmost one. The woman in the red gown is Lumi. Lumi has a heart of stone. Lumi's worst enemy is she herself. Save Lumi from herself. Don't drink the whole cappuccino. Remember to fill your cup because you can't pour from an empty cup. Lumi, her name is Lumi. I read all the paper serviettes. She just stood there with a smile on her red lips. I watched as she walked towards the exit. She looked at me through the glass door with the saddest face I've ever seen. There was another paper serviette under my cup. I drew a green ribbon on it, with the words, "Are you okay?" I carefully placed all the paper serviettes in my pocket. I remember thinking my cappuccino was getting colder. It's okay, my cup is half full.